a single lemon peel, and a corpse with no wounds. Welcome to Faded Echoes. I am your host, Ombra. Let's grow this mystery-loving community. Drop a comment and share where you're watching from. Your thoughts always brighten this space. It was a Tuesday afternoon, which meant the air in the brownstone was as heavy with the scent of beef consommé as it was with the unspoken understanding that Nero Wolfe was not to be disturbed. Not by telephone, not by doorbell, and certainly not by anything as vulgar as a visitor with a problem. But when Fritz came into the office holding an envelope between two fingers like it had been wrapped in toxic waste, I knew something had gone off script. "Mr. Goodwin," Fritz said, in that dignified tone of his that always sounds like it should be accompanied by a string quartet. "This arrived by courier. No return address, just your name on the front." He held out the envelope like he didn't want it to touch his apron. It was pale yellow, the kind of yellow you only find on lemons that cost $2 a piece and don't taste like anything. My name was handwritten in thick black ink. Archie Goodwin. No CO, Nero Wolfe, or street number. Just the confidence that the thing would find me. That was suspicious right off the bat. We don't exactly advertise. I took the envelope and weighed it in my hand. Light. No bumps or wires. If it was going to explode, it was going to do it tastefully. Wolfe glanced up from his copy of Le Variété Gastronomique, eyebrows arching like theater curtains. "If that's a bill, Mr. Goodwin, deposit it in the fire." "It's not a bill," I said. "It's mail addressed to me, which means I'm allowed to be curious." I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, neatly folded, printed in plain block type. Was one sentence. "I will give you $10,000 if you steal something for me." That's it. No name, no instructions, no postscript, just that. I read it twice, then looked up at Wolfe. "Well?" he asked. "I think someone either doesn't know me at all," I said, "or knows me way too well." Wolfe made a sound halfway between a grunt and a sigh, which, if you know him, you know is his version of leaning forward with interest. "Show me." I handed him the letter. He took it delicately, glanced over it, and then held it between his thumb and forefinger, as if the paper itself might betray something more than its printed threat. "This is typed," he said. "Not composed on a typewriter. A printer. Modern. The tone is intentionally provocative." "It's bait," I said. "But for what?" Wolfe didn't answer. He set the letter down on his desk blotter and stared at it like it had just offered to rewrite the rules of chess. "Call Saul Panzer," he said finally. I blinked. "You're taking the case?" "I have not said that. But if someone is fishing in our pond, I want to know who's casting the line." "$10,000 is a big worm," I muttered, reaching for the phone. He closed his eyes. "And Mr. Goodwin?" "Yes. Tell Saul to find out exactly who wants to corrupt you. If they're clever enough to think you might be bought, they may be foolish enough to try again." I nodded and dialed. The game hadn't started, but the pieces were already moving. And for Nero Wolfe, that was more than enough reason to stay in his chair and take command of the board. Saul Panzer showed up at 6:30 sharp, looking like he'd walked through a windstorm made of confidential information and come out the other side with his tie still straight. He was wearing his usual second-hand raincoat, and that expression that meant he'd already learned more than I'd asked him to. He gave Fritz a polite nod and stepped into the office with the self-assurance of a man who knew that, in his particular line of work, silence made more noise than words. Wolfe didn't look up from his orchids. He just said, "Report." Saul handed me a folded sheet of legal paper. "Got this typed for you, Archie? It's not long." I unfolded it. Saul's print was neat and spare. Courier picked up the envelope from a midtown drop box on 44th. "Paid in cash. Security camera caught partial plate of vehicle. New Jersey tags, digits unclear. Driver wore gloves, sunglasses, cap. No ID. Dropped envelope at Brownstone via courier service called Speed Hand. Tip in cash. Used pseudonym Paul Darrow." Speed Hand got the call from a burner cell, pinged near Washington Square. Phone disconnected. 5 minutes later. Dead end. No leads on Paul Darrow. Alias used once before, minor art forgery case, 2 years back. Unsold painting, private collector, no charges filed. Name probably recycled. Envelope paper is luxury brand. Lure and Crane, sold in boutique stationers, one in Soho, one on East 65th, narrowing list of recent buyers. More, as it comes. I read it twice, handed it to Wolfe, then turned to Saul. That's fast even for you. He shrugged. The money smelled like someone in a hurry. You were the bait. That makes this personal. Wolfe finally looked up, eyes half-lidded, but focused. You've done well. Continue. Keep me apprised of any purchases at those stationers, and trace the painting incident linked to that name. Saul gave a quick nod, and was gone. He didn't linger, which meant something about the whole thing felt off to him. I've learned to trust Saul's silences. Wolfe stared at the envelope again, now sitting lonely on the corner of his desk like a lemon wedge left too long in the sun. This, he muttered, is an overture. To what? I asked, still on my feet. Wolfe didn't respond immediately. He reached for a spoonful of beer he'd been letting go warm, his version of deep thought. There are only 2 types of men who offer money for theft. The first is a fool, the second has already staged the crime, and needs a scapegoat. I grinned. So which are we dealing with? That, Wolfe said, is what you will determine. The next morning brought a disruption. Now Wolfe's morning schedule is as sacred as a Swiss train timetable. From 9 to 11, he tends the orchids. No one is to enter the plant rooms without threat of death or worse conversation. At 10:30, the doorbell rang. I was at my desk, and Fritz was finishing breakfast prep. So I went. Standing there was a woman with red gloves, a black cloche hat, and cheekbones sharp enough to threaten low-flying birds. She looked like she belonged on the cover of a 1932 cigarette ad, complete with eyes that said she didn't believe in much, especially not you. Archie Goodwin, she asked, voice low and deliberate. That's right. She extended a gloved hand, but didn't offer her name. May I come in? Depends, I said. Is it urgent, desperate, scandalous, or merely inconvenient? She allowed the ghost of a smile. Let's say it's delicate. That was enough for me to hold the door open. She stepped inside, bringing with her a faint trail of amber perfume, and what I assumed was trouble. We sat in the office. She declined coffee, but accepted a glass of water, which she sipped once and then ignored. She removed her gloves but kept the hat. When Wolfe finally entered, 3 minutes late, which meant he was annoyed at being early, she stood. Mr. Wolfe, she said, my name is Callista Vale. I believe someone is trying to frame me for something I haven't done. Wolfe gave her a brief nod and lowered himself into the red leather chair, like a king arriving at his throne. Explain. I'm an art advisor, she began. Private clients. Discretion required. 2 days ago, a man I worked with, Trevor Dunn, called to say he was in possession of something stolen. He wouldn't tell me what, only that it was valuable, small, and very old. Did he say where he obtained it? Wolfe asked. No. Just that he'd made a mistake. He was panicked. He said he'd named me to someone, but swore I wasn't in danger. I hadn't spoken to Trevor in months before that call. Why you? I asked. Why name you at all? She hesitated. We had a falling out. Professional. Personal. I'd warned him once that if he ever crossed a line in the art world, I wouldn't follow. He called me self-righteous. Is he correct? Wolfe asked. That earned him her second ghost smile. Probably. Wolfe steepled his fingers. And what is it you expect from us, Miss Vale? She reached into her handbag and pulled out a second envelope. White, not yellow. Inside was a single lemon peel, dried, curled, fragile. Wolfe stared at it. It arrived this morning, she said. No note, just the peel. I thought it was a joke, but then I heard that someone tried to hire you indirect. Miss Vale, Wolfe said, voice going cool. How did you learn about that? I didn't, she said calmly. I guessed. You're the only man in New York whose moral vanity could resist that kind of bait. And the person pulling strings has no imagination, just gall. That got Wolfe's attention. The peel is a reference, she continued, to something Trevor and I once discussed. We saw a 17th century oil painting at an estate auction, a Dutch still life incredibly detailed. In the foreground was a twisted lemon peel, lit like gold. The painter's signature was embedded in it. Trevor called it a hidden confession. He loved that idea, a secret hidden in plain sight. Wolfe glanced at me. You've heard of such a painting? Sure, I said. Willem Claes. Hedda, one of those guys. They loved lemons. Always peeling something. Wolfe grunted. This is no longer bait. It's prelude. To what? I asked again. To an accusation, Wolfe said. Or a test. Someone wants to know if we will move. Callista Vale rose, gloves in hand. Then perhaps you should. She left without a backward glance. The door clicked shut behind her like punctuation. Wolfe sat for a long time without speaking. Finally, he said, Archie, arrange to visit this Mr. Trevor Dunn discreetly. If he's home, ask questions. If he is not, ask more. I nodded, heading for the hat rack. Mr. Goodwin. Wolfe called as I opened the door. Yeah? If you see any lemons, don't eat them. He closed his eyes again. I hit the sidewalk with questions forming fast. Who sent the envelope? What had Trevor Dunn stolen, or claimed to? And who was playing games with Wolfe's patience? Whatever it was, it had already crossed a line. And it wasn't done peeling yet. Trevor Dunn lived in a building that tried too hard to pretend it was old money. Sandstone columns, brushed brass fixtures, and a doorman with a vocabulary that probably topped mine in syllables, but not in judgment. He gave me the kind of look you reserve for guys in second-hand suits who don't announce themselves, then pressed a button and said, Mr. Dunn isn't taking visitors today. I gave him my most charming smile. Tell him it's urgent. And tell him I'm not a visitor. I'm a complication. That got a blink. A minute later, he was back on the button. No answer upstairs. You call that taking a message? I call that privacy. So I tipped him $5, small enough to avoid suspicion, big enough to encourage loose lips. Mr. Dunn's been in and out the last few days. Came back yesterday around 11 p.m., left again early this morning. No bags, but he looked off. Off how? Jumpy, like he expected someone to grab him in the lobby. That was promising. I thanked him and headed around the side of the building to see if the service entrance or trash bins might offer up any treasures. You'd be amazed what high-class criminals throw out when they panic. Cellophane, matchbooks, half-burned lists, but I didn't need to dig. I spotted it right away. In the alley behind the service entrance, just beside the dumpster, was a torn corner of an envelope, pale yellow, the same stock as the one sent to me. Now, I'm not in the habit of collecting garbage, but this was worth a baggie. I stashed it and returned to the front, gave the doorman a nod, and walked half a block to a payphone. I called Saul. Yeah, he said. News? Trevor Dunn's ducking. He's not in, and the building staff are tight-lipped, but nervous. Found a piece of a lemon envelope in the trash. Interesting, Saul said. I was just about to call you. Our man Dunn hasn't been to work in 3 days. His employer's tight-lipped, says he took personal time. Sounds like panic to me. I got a friend at a gallery in Chelsea. Says Dunn was sniffing around something called the Vermeer pastiche last week. Vermeer? No, pastiche. A fake, but a good one. Supposed to be a 19th century forgery. Small, unsigned, technically brilliant, but not real. Word is it went missing a few days ago. Quiet like. Ah, I said. And we have an art advisor with a mysterious lemon peel and a guy with shaky hands going off the grid. Exactly. You want me to press Den's employer? No. Just keep tracking who's asking questions about that painting. I've got a feeling the real show is about to start. Back at the brownstone, I found Wolfe in the office, pretending not to be impatient. Fritz had brought in a tray with beer, bread and cheese, and Wolfe was mid-sip when I gave him the up. He listened, eyes closed, and when I was done, he said, "So, a painting, likely forged. A man in hiding, and a woman who anticipates our involvement, plus an alley with envelope debris," I said, holding up the corner piece. Wolfe gave it a glance, then waved me off. "We are past collecting scraps. This is about pressure." "Pressure from who?" He reached for a slice of bread. "Someone who knows I do not like to be manipulated. Someone attempting to control the tempo of events, using you, then Miss Vale, and now Dunn's absence. So we're dancing?" He smiled faintly. "No, Mr. Goodwin. We are baiting the conductor." That evening, the bait worked. At precisely 9:12, the phone rang. I answered. "Goodwin," I answered. The voice was male, crisp, rehearsed. "Trevor Dunn is in trouble. You need to speak to a man named Carver Lang. He runs a private gallery above an antiques bookstore on 10th Avenue. Ask for room yellow." Before I could ask anything, the line went dead. I gave Wolfe the name. He nodded once. "Tomorrow morning," he said, "you will visit Mr. Lang. Alone, preferably, but with precautions. If this is a trap, let us at least spring it with elegance." Carver Lang's gallery was hidden behind a door that looked like it hadn't been opened since Hoover's first term. A dusty bell jingled overhead as I entered, and an elderly man with wire-rimmed glasses looked up from behind the counter. "I'm looking for room yellow," I said. He studied me a moment, then nodded slowly. "Upstairs, third door." The hallway smelled like linseed oil and secrets. I found room yellow behind a door marked only with a small brass plate. Inside was a private gallery, dimly lit. A few small paintings hung on dark velvet walls. There was only one man in the room, tall, bony, with slicked back hair and a suit so well tailored it might have been stapled to his frame. "Mr. Goodwin," he said, turning. "Carver Lang?" "Yes. I was told you'd be coming. I assume this is about Trevor." "That's a good guess." Lang motioned for me to sit. "You know he's missing." I gathered. What I don't know is what he had, and why someone wants to make it everyone's problem. Lang sighed and leaned back. 6 months ago, a painting surfaced in a private Parisian collection. A still life believed to be by Peter Claes, like Vermeer, but known for his breakfast scenes, rich textures, elaborate detail. This one had a lemon peel in the foreground. Very dramatic. Let me guess. Signature in the peel. Lang. Length. Yes. How did you? Long story. Go on. It was examined by 2 experts. Both said it was authentic. Then another weighed in, said it was a brilliant forgery, likely 19th century, a pastiche meant to deceive without ever being sold publicly. And Dunn was obsessed with it. He called it a confession in oil, claimed it proved a master forger had worked within the Dutch school for decades, undetected. Last week that painting disappeared. Quietly. From you. Lang hesitated. From a client of mine. And Dunn? I believe he took it. But I can't prove it. And now I can't find him. I stood. If he contacts you, you call me. No games. Lang nodded, but his eyes were calculating. I didn't like it. Back at the brownstone, I relayed everything. Wolfe sat motionless. "So," he murmured, "a painting with a false signature, a man who loves secrets, a woman who wants to stay clean, and someone turning the screws." I waited. Wolfe opened his eyes. "We now bait our own trap." "How?" "Invite Miss Vale for lunch tomorrow. Inform her that the painting has resurfaced, and that its disappearance is tied to Trevor's recent movements. She will react, and then we shall know who is leading this dance. And if she doesn't come, she will." Wolfe leaned back. "This is not about art, Mr. Goodwin. It is about confession, and those always find a listener. I didn't sleep well that night. Too many lemons. Not enough answers." Miss Vale arrived the next day at 1 o'clock, wearing a dove-gray suit and the kind of perfume that made Fritz look up from the salad plates with open suspicion. Wolfe didn't comment on the scent. though he gave her a glance that traveled from her hat to her heels and back again before inviting her to sit with the nod of a man who's just agreed to let a fox into the henhouse, for observational purposes only. "Thank you for coming," Wolfe said, folding his hands atop the table in the dining room. "We rarely entertain during meals, but Mr. Goodwin insisted your presence would serve the digestion." "High praise," she said smoothly. "Though I suspect you don't bring many women to lunch." "Mr. Goodwin brings women to lunch," Wolfe replied. "I endure them. Salad, for it's served." Silent as ever, though I caught the flicker in his eye that said he wasn't pleased about extra silverware. Miss Vale accepted her plate with grace, but her eyes flicked from Wolfe to me and back again with practiced calculation. "You said there was news," she prompted after the first few bites. "Yes," Wolfe said. "The painting." She paused with her fork halfway to her mouth. "You found it? We know who had it, and possibly why. But not yet where it is now." Her voice stayed even, but she blinked a shade too slow. "Trevor?" "Very likely," Wolfe said. "Though I suspect you already know that." "I don't," she said. "Miss Vale," Wolfe murmured, "you are a liar, but not an especially dishonest one. You believe in lines, moral and professional, but you are no stranger to sidestepping when necessary. That is why Trevor trusted you enough to mention the painting, and that is why he feared you might turn on him." She set down her fork. "I'm here, Mr. Wolfe, because I'm trying not to turn on him, because I want to understand what's going on before I get pulled in deeper. I had nothing to do with the theft, and yet someone thought to include you in the scheme. Why?" Her jaw tightened. "Because Trevor talked too much when he drank. Because I was with him when he first saw that painting. Because we both said, out loud, that it could disappear and no one would notice. Because it wasn't in a museum, just a private collection, and maybe someone thought that meant I'd help him steal it." Wolfe nodded. "So you didn't help him, but you planted the seed." She flinched. "Mr. Dunn is missing," Wolfe continued, "and others are looking for him. Others with fewer reservations. If you wish to remain uninvolved, you must help us find him before they do." Miss Vale studied him. "And if I don't?" "You will be implicated," Wolfe said flatly. "Not by us, but by someone more interested in recovering a forgery, then explaining how it vanished. I told you, I don't know where Trevor is." "I believe you," Wolfe said, "but I don't believe you've told us everything." She was silent for a long moment. Then, "He sent me a message last night." Wolfe's nostrils flared. She pulled out her phone, tapped, and slid it across the table. I leaned over and read, "Callista, don't trust anyone. Not even the ones asking the right questions. Tell no one about Lang. I made a copy. It's not perfect, but it's good enough to vanish." I passed the phone to Wolfe. He read it twice, then handed it back without a word. "You said you didn't know where he was," I said. "I don't. That message came from an unlisted number. I tried calling back, but it disconnected. That's all I've heard." "And the copy?" Wolfe asked. Did he mean a photographic reproduction? A painted forgery? What kind of copy? She shook her head. "No idea. But if he really tried to recreate the painting from memory, he's out of his depth." "Not necessarily," Wolfe murmured. "He is an art handler with a good eye. Given time, a steady hand can mimic anything." "He didn't have time," she said. "Not unless he planned this months ago." Wolfe leaned back. "Then someone helped him." I was about to ask who, but the doorbell rang. Fritz appeared at the dining room door. "Mr. Panzer is here." Wolfe nodded. "Show him in." Saul entered with a folder under his arm, and a look on his face that suggested the pot had just started to boil. "Got something," he said. "Lange's client. The one who lost the painting. Name's Felix Muradin. Runs a semi-legal private collection in Rhinebeck. Imports European pieces through antique routes, sells to academic buyers with blank checkbooks." "Does he know it's missing?" I asked. "Not officially," Saul said. "But Lang's been covering, telling him it's being cleaned, reframed, whatever. Merridin's either in on it or being played. Wolfe took the folder. Anything else? One more thing. I spoke with a restorer who used to work with Dunn, said Trevor was obsessed with learning how to fake canvas aging, talked about fooling the molecules, used lemon juice to speed oxidation under infrared. Wolfe's eyes flicked to me. The lemon peel, I said. A message. And a method. Indeed, Wolfe murmured. Miss Vale, if you would be so kind. Where was the last place you and Trevor viewed art together? A gallery, a studio, a home. She frowned. We saw the painting at Merridin's townhouse last spring. But Trevor and I also visited a studio in Brooklyn 2 months ago. He said a friend was working on large-scale texture studies, but he didn't introduce us, just watch. Wolfe nodded slowly. Address? She dug through her phone again and handed it over. He turned to Saul. Go, quietly. See what's at that studio. If Dunn is hiding or working, he may be there. Saul gave a sharp nod and vanished. Wolfe stood, shock of shocks, and moved to the Globe bar. I believe, Miss Vale, that you may go, he said. You've done enough for now. She stood. Will you find him? If I do, Wolfe said, pouring a brandy, I shall do what is required. Nothing more. She gave him a long look, nodded once, and let herself out. I waited. Wolfe sipped his brandy, then turned to me. The problem, Archie, is not the theft. It is the ambition behind it. Someone wanted to prove they could fake the truth. Worse, Wolfe said. They wanted to own the lie. He returned to his chair and closed his eyes. When Mr. Panza returns, we shall know if the lie has found a home. I went back to my desk, the scent of lemon still faint in the air. And somewhere in Brooklyn, Trevor Dunn was either perfecting a forgery or preparing to disappear beneath it. Saul Panza returned at just past 7, and he looked like he'd climbed out of a chimney and into a conspiracy. His coat had a fresh tear near the pocket, and there was a faint smear of something like charcoal on his sleeve. He didn't sit down when Wolfe gestured. Instead, he handed me a camera memory card in a plastic case and said, I didn't knock. I watched. Wolfe nodded approvingly. You weren't seen. Once, Saul admitted. Maybe a woman on the fire escape across the alley. She didn't signal recognition, but she had binoculars. Might have just been nosy. Brooklyn's full of people like that. Proceed, Wolfe said. Saul placed a second object on Wolfe's desk. A lemon peel, fresh, wet, coiled into a spiral like a paper streamer and folded into a wax paper sandwich bag. That was in the garbage can outside the studio's rear door, Saul said. Along with 3 squeezed lemon halves, a pile of shredded art books, and a tube of yellow ochre. I raised an eyebrow. Symbolic or just sour? Wolfe ignored the joke. And the studio itself? Low rent, but clean. Trevor's name isn't on the lease. It's under a shell company that links back to a gallery in Antwerp. No light after dusk except for one lamp. I looked through the window. He handed Wolfe a printed photograph, grainy, high ISO, but clear enough to show what mattered. A painting stood on an easel in the middle of the studio. Still life, grapes, pewter goblet, linen cloth draped over the edge of a table. And in the foreground, unmistakable even in bad lighting, a lemon, half peeled, the spiral rind curling like a question mark. Wolfe held the photo close, his eyes narrowing. He's trying to reproduce the Cles. Looks like it, Saul said. And he's close. I couldn't see the signature from the angle I was at, but the texture's convincing. And done. I asked. No sign. But someone's been there recently. There was still steam on the inside of the glass when I looked. Either Trevor's laying low, or someone else is handling the brush now. Wolfe exhaled through his nose. We must draw him out, before someone else decides to. I leaned forward. You think Merridin's looking too? I think Merridin is capable of hiring someone who is, Wolfe said. And if Trevor Dunn has truly created a forgery of that quality, there will be no shortage of interested parties, none of them likely to be patient. He glanced at Saul. Anything else? One odd thing. The landlord said a man came by 3 nights ago, asking about the space, claimed to be an art buyer. Big frame, dark glasses, mid-Atlantic accent. Didn't leave a name. Just asked if the tenant ever worked at night. Wolfe looked at me. Mr. Goodwin, you will go to that studio tomorrow, before noon. Take photographs of the painting in natural light. Do not touch anything. Do not speak to anyone, unless forced. And if Mr. Dunn is there, I play it cool. No, Wolfe said. You play it honest. Tell him we know. Tell him we understand. I nodded, not entirely reassured. I was at the Brooklyn studio by 10. It sat above a reclaimed tile showroom, the kind of place that smelled like varnish and regret. I climbed the stairs slow, listening. The hallway was still. When I reached the door, I knocked once, then tried the knob. It opened. The space was empty. The light through the skylight was clean and perfect, the kind that artists would stab each other for in the Renaissance. The painting was still on the easel. I stepped closer. It was better than Saul's photo had shown. The detail was obsessive. The way the lemon peel caught the light. It wasn't just technique. It was interpretation. Trevor had done more than copy. He'd tried to inhabit the original painter's mind, and maybe succeeded. There was no signature. Not in the corner, not in the peel, not hidden in the wine goblet's reflection, which told me one thing. He wasn't finished. I took a dozen shots with my phone from different angles and distances, then turned to look around. A notebook sat open on a side table. I glanced at the last page. Imitation is preservation. Truth is temporary. Style is survival. It wasn't signed either. I heard the door creak behind me. Archie, said a voice. I turned. Trevor Dunn stood in the doorway, looking thinner than in the photos and paler. His hands were paint-streaked, and his eyes flicked around the room like he was still trying to decide if I was a threat or just the next symptom in a long-running fever. "Hiya," I said. "Been looking for you." "I figured." He closed the door slowly. "I'm not here to drag you out." I added, "Wolfe wants to talk." He laughed once, quiet and dry. "I bet he does." "You're in trouble," I said. "You're in trouble," I said. "No," Trevor said. I was in trouble. Then I realized the only way out was through. I glanced back at the painting. "Through what? Fraud?" "Through proof," he said, stepping forward. "Proof that I could do it. That I could remake something so well it erased the original. Not sell it. Not even show it. Just make it real again." "That's poetic," I said. "But other people think you stole the original." "I didn't," he snapped. "Lang had it. Lang knew it was a fake. Mirrodin bought it anyway. He wanted the illusion, but I saw the seams. And now they're hunting me because I dared to perfect what they tried to hide. So this is revenge." "No," he said. "This is justice." He crossed to the painting and looked at it, not like a creator but like a twin brother seeing his own reflection move out of sync. "They sent someone," he said. "A guy. Big. Quiet. Watched the studio for hours. That's why I stayed away last night." "Trevor," I said, "someone's going to get hurt. Maybe you." "I know." "Then come with me, talk to Wolfe." He hesitated. "He'll want the painting." "No," I said. "He wants to stop this before the wrong person takes it." A long silence. Then, "Give me an hour. Let me finish the signature. Then I'll go." "You finish that," I said carefully, "and it becomes more than a study. It becomes evidence." "I know," he said again. But he turned back to the easel and picked up his brush. When I got back to the brownstone, Wolfe was waiting. "Well," he asked. "He's alive. He's rational, barely. He thinks he's righting an artistic wrong. He wants an hour to finish it." Wolfe frowned. "Foolish." "He's scared," I said, "but proud. Like someone on the last page of a manifesto." Wolfe nodded slowly. "We must act before he does." I raised an eyebrow. "How?" "We arrange for Mr. Lang to visit tomorrow," Wolfe said. "We shall see how much he values authenticity versus possession. And Trevor. If he returns, Wolfe said, we will keep him here. For safety. He turned toward the window. This is no longer about art, Mr. Goodwin. It is about identity. And theft. No, Wolfe said. Creation. Which, as it happens, is the most dangerous form of theft there is. I sat back. We weren't chasing a criminal anymore. We were chasing a man who wanted to rewrite reality and sign his name at the bottom. Carver Lang arrived the next morning at 11, wearing a coat too warm for the weather and an expression too cool for comfort. Fritz met him at the door and ushered him into the office without offering refreshment. That, in our house, is the equivalent of a raised eyebrow and a hand on the ejector seat. Lang took in the room the way art dealers take in wall space, calculating how much of it he could own. He was carrying a slim leather portfolio under one arm, the kind that looked expensive enough to contain lies on embossed stationery. Wolfe didn't rise, of course. He sat with his fingers steepled and his gaze fixed on Lang like the man had tried to replace the couch with a chaise. Long while Wolfe wasn't looking. Lang offered a nod. Thank you for the invitation, Mr. Wolfe. You are not here at my invitation, Wolfe said evenly. You are here because you are a link in a chain I intend to unfasten. Lang blinked, then smiled. I see we're skipping pretense. Please, Wolfe said. Do not waste our time with studied vagueness. Mr. Goodwin has spoken with Trevor Dunn. You are aware of the painting's disappearance. You have obfuscated the facts to your client, Mr. Meriden. What I want now is clarity. Lang set the portfolio down on the corner of Wolfe's desk without permission. Then let me begin by saying I did not commission the theft. I did not suggest it, fund it, or benefit from it. You lied about its absence, Wolfe said. I managed the situation, Lang corrected. To prevent panic, accusations, or worse. If Meriden believed I had lost control of a piece he valued regardless of its authenticity, I would have lost not only his trust but access to an entire tier of collectors. You mean frauds, I said. Lang gave me a look best described as practiced condescension. I mean discretion. The art world, Mr. Goodwin, is as much about the story as the canvas. Provenance is an opinion wrapped in parchment and sealed with money. Wolfe gave the barest nod. Your opinion, Mr. Lang, was the clay's still life genuine? Lang hesitated, then lowered his voice. No. It was one of several forgeries produced in the late 1800s, probably in Brussels or Utrecht, but it was brilliant, untraceable, nearly, enough that Meriden could brag without guilt and show it without fear. And yet Mr. Dunn believed he could improve it. Lang smiled tightly. He believed he could remake it. That's different. Do you know where he is? No, Lang said. I swear to you, I don't. If I did, I would have already dragged him out by the collar and handed him to the authorities, or worse, Meriden. Why worse? I asked. Because Meriden feels mocked, Lang said. He bought a secret, a forgery so perfect, it fooled the experts. And now the secret is gone. Not just stolen, exposed. That makes him feel stupid. And men like Meriden pay to avoid feeling stupid. Wolfe's voice dropped a tone. Is Meriden looking for Dunn? Lang gave the smallest nod. Yes, I suspect he's hired someone. A private agent. Discreet. Aggressive. I looked at Wolfe. Could be the guy watching the studio. Wolfe inclined his head. We must move swiftly then. Lang opened his portfolio and slid a photograph across the desk. It was the original painting. Same lemon peel. Same setting. Different brushwork. Just a hair more baroque. A touch more indulgent in the folds of the cloth. The glint of light on pewter. That's the photo we took when it arrived in New York, Lang said. It's high res. You'll note the faint signature hidden in the peel leftmost coil. Wolfe examined it. Then held up the grainy photo Saul had taken in Brooklyn. And here, Lang squinted. No signature. Not yet, Wolfe said softly. Lang tensed. He's planning to finish it. Today, I said. If he hasn't already. Lang stood abruptly. Then you need to stop him. Now, if that painting circulates, if someone sees it before I recover the original, you'll be humiliated, Wolfe interrupted. Professionally ruined. But worse, Mr. Lang, you will be exposed as a man who valued the illusion more than the ethics of acquisition. Lang clenched his jaw. I didn't come here for a lecture. No, Wolfe said. You came to gauge your leverage. He stood, a rare move, and Lang backed up a step without realizing it. You will contact Mr. Meriden and delay him. Feed him whatever narrative you like. You will not pursue Mr. Dunn, legally or otherwise. If you do, I will expose the provenance trail of every forgery you've touched in the past 10 years. And I do mean every one. Lang blinked. You wouldn't dare. Wolfe's voice was cold steel. I dare everything when my house is disturbed, and it was disturbed the moment someone used Mr. Goodwin to deliver a test. Lang's mouth opened, closed. Then he gave a stiff nod and turned to leave. At the door, he paused. If you see Trevor, tell him the painting wasn't the only thing he stole. He made Meriden feel like a fool, and that's what gets people killed in this business. Then he was gone. I turned to Wolfe. You think that threat was real? No, Wolfe said. I think it was insurance. Lang wants us to handle the cleanup, which we will. He turned back toward the window. Call Mr. Dunn. Invite him to come. Say nothing of Lang, and if he won't, he will, Wolfe said. Because he wants one thing more than safety. Recognition. Trevor arrived 3 hours later, carrying the painting wrapped in brown paper and twine. He looked exhausted, not scared, just hollow, like someone who'd finished a marathon only to realize he hadn't outrun the past. He laid the bundle on the office table, unwrapped it, and stepped back. Wolfe said nothing for a long time. Then, it's magnificent. Trevor blinked. It's fake. Of course, Wolfe said, but it is magnificently fake. Trevor glanced at me. So now what? Wolfe didn't answer right away. He took his seat and leaned back, eyes closing briefly. You sought to prove a point. That you could replace not just an image, but a truth. That you could inhabit another's mastery. You have done that. But in so doing, you have made yourself a target, not of the law but of pride. Trevor sat. I know. Wolfe opened his eyes. We will keep the painting here, for now. And I will speak with Mr. Meriden. Through his representatives. You will not return to the studio. You will not contact Miss Vale. You will remain in the guest room until I deem otherwise. Trevor laughed quietly. So I'm a prisoner? No, Wolfe said. You are protected. I leaned forward. And the original, where is it? Trevor hesitated. Gone. Gone where? I burned it, he said. The night I started the copy. Wolfe didn't flinch. That, he murmured, is madness. Trevor met his gaze. It was necessary. There can only be one. Wolfe was silent a long time. Then he said, Go. Fritz will show you the room. Trevor stood, picked up the painting, and left the office. I looked at Wolfe. You believe him? Yes, Wolfe said. And worse, I understand him. He reached for his beer. Mr. Goodwin, he said, we must begin preparing the gathering. All the suspects? I asked. Wolfe nodded. Lang, Vale, possibly Meriden's representative. Let them see what was made and what it cost. I sat back in my chair. We were no longer solving a theft. We were unmaking a legacy. They arrived one by one, as instructed. Carver Lang came first. He was punctual by nature if not by ethics. He wore a conservative suit and the faint scent of anise, like he hoped to confuse Wolfe's palate into leniency. He didn't speak much as Fritz led him to the office, but his eyes were sharp and sweeping, cataloging every item on the bookshelves like he was pricing the place for auction. Next came Callista Vale, just as composed as before, though she wore a darker shade of lipstick and a slightly more defensive posture. She acknowledged me with a curt nod and took the red chair without being asked. The third guest was the real surprise, not Felix Meriden himself. He wouldn't deign to step foot in a brownstone not featured in Architectural Digest. but his representative won Mr. Avery Beale. If Lang was a weasel in a waistcoat, Beale was a barrister in Wolfe's clothing. Grey hair, tan skin, voice like aged mahogany. He introduced himself with the kind of smile that gets contracts signed and enemies buried in litigation. Wolfe didn't bother with pleasantries. He waited until they were all seated, and then said, "You are here because a painting was taken, and a painting was created. One replaced the other. But the implications are not symmetrical." He nodded to me, and I rose and placed the replica on the easel by the bookshelves. I pulled the cloth off in one smooth motion. Even Lang, who had already seen Saul's photo, exhaled faintly. The lemon peel glowed in the afternoon light, subtle and deliberate, its spiral curve casting a soft shadow across the linen. Callista looked at it with something like awe. Lang looked at it like a threat. Only Beale's expression changed in stages: curiosity, then calculation, then a cool sort of amusement. "This," Wolfe said, "was painted by Mr. Trevor Dunn, in secret, from memory, from obsession." Beale broke the silence first. "That's the copy." "No," Wolfe said. "That is the creation." Lang leaned forward. "You're saying the original was destroyed?" "Yes," Wolfe said. "By the same man who painted this. He believed, wrongly or not, that the original was already a lie, and that his version was a better lie." Beale steepled his fingers. "Felix Meriden will want restitution." "He will not receive it," Wolfe said calmly. Beale raised an eyebrow. "You speak as if the matter's already settled." "It is," Wolfe replied. "Mr. Meriden purchased a painting of questionable authenticity through a private arrangement with Mr. Lang. That painting no longer exists. There was no insurance. There is no documented provenance that would withstand scrutiny. Pursuing the matter in court would expose more than it would recover." Lang stiffened, but said nothing. Wolfe turned his gaze on him. "You misled your client. You then attempted to conceal the theft by suggesting it was temporary. You indirectly encouraged pursuit of Mr. Dunn, though you knew the truth might be inconvenient. That ends now." Lang opened his mouth, but Wolfe raised a finger. "Miss Vale," Wolfe said, turning to her, "you withheld information, not out of malice, but self-preservation. You believed Mr. Dunn's obsession would implode without your involvement. You were wrong." She didn't argue. "And Mr. Beale," Wolfe continued, "you are here to make a calculation, so allow me to help you with it. This painting has no market value, but it has extraordinary narrative value. If Meriden acknowledges it as the replacement of a previous work, he may claim to possess a ghost forgery, a forged piece of a forged legacy. That has appealed to certain circles. Academics, collectors of curiosities." Beale looked almost impressed. "You suggest we embrace the fraud." "I suggest you own the fraud," Wolfe said, openly. "Reframed as a meditation on authenticity and illusion." "And Dunn?" Beale asked. "He simply walks away." Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "Mr. Dunn will remain here for a time. I am sheltering him. If he is pursued beyond this room, I will release a detailed account of the entire affair to art publications, legal journals, and at least 2 well-placed podcast producers." That got a reaction. Lang visibly paled. Beale pursed his lips, then slowly leaned back in his chair. "And the original?" Beale asked. Wolfe said nothing for a moment. Then, gone, irretrievably. Burned. Lang whispered something under his breath. Vale closed her eyes. Beale stared at the painting for a long time. Then he said, "Mr. Meriden will accept this solution," reluctantly. "Of course," Wolfe said. Beale stood, smoothed his jacket, and nodded to me. "A pleasure." "Wait," Callista said, standing. "You're just agreeing? After all this?" Beale looked at her. "My job is to mitigate loss and optimize salvage. What would you have me do?" "Sue a ghost." He left. Lang followed a moment later, avoiding Wolfe's gaze entirely. Callista remained. "He'll be okay?" she asked, quietly. "Yes," Wolfe said. "In time. But you must understand, he crossed a line." "I know," she said. But I think he crossed it to find himself. Wolfe nodded once. And now he must live with what he found. She looked at the painting again, then left without another word. The office was quiet. I pulled the cloth back over the painting and turned to Wolfe. "You're really not going to give it to Meriden?" "Why should I?" Wolfe said. "He never had it to begin with. You're not going to keep it." "No," Wolfe said. "But I may hang it in the guest room. Temporarily." I laughed. "You think it's good?" "I think," Wolfe said, pouring himself a beer, "it's dangerous. A forgery is a crime, but a perfect forgery is a temptation." We didn't speak for a while. The house settled. Then Wolfe said, "Mr. Goodwin, you will return the photograph to Saul. Ask him to file it under artistic misconduct. New category. It is now." He took a sip of beer. "Identity," he murmured, "is not what we inherit. It is what we dare to counterfeit." I made a note of it, mentally. Might even use it as the final line in my report. After all, Wolfe's not wrong. And neither was Trevor, entirely. The truth is just another frame. What matters is who signs the corner. Dinner was roast duck with black cherries. Wolfe didn't speak again for the rest of the evening. But the lemon peel stayed on the office tray, a quiet spiral of caution. And the painting remained, perfect, false, and uncomfortably alive. Trevor Dunn left the brownstone 2 days later. He didn't make a speech, didn't linger, didn't ask for anyone to see him off. He came down the stairs in clean clothes. Fritz had laid out, pressed slacks, pale shirt, dark blazer, and carried only a slim case, which I didn't ask about. It could have held brushes, it could have held nothing at all. I met him at the front door. "You sure you're ready for the real world?" I asked. He gave a half smile. "Depends on which one you mean. I'm guessing not the one with galleries and collectors." "Not for a while." I nodded. "Where are you headed?" "Nowhere famous," he said. "I've got a friend upstate. Barn, studio, no phone, just canvas and quiet." "Sounds like a dream." "It's a sentence," he said. "But not the worst one." We stood there for a second. Then he said, "Tell Wolfe, thanks." "I'll tell him." He paused. "And tell Callista." I tried. I didn't ask at what. There were too many candidates. Then he was gone, down the steps, out the gate, and into a cab he hadn't called, which I had. Back upstairs, Wolfe was seated in his chair, arms on the rests, beer at his elbow. He didn't look at me when I entered. "He's gone," I said. "I know," Wolfe replied. "You going to miss him?" "No," he said. "But I will miss the question he raised." I took my seat across from him. "Which question is that?" Wolfe's eyes closed briefly. "Whether truth is more valuable than the illusion it replaces, I waited. He went on. "Dunn didn't destroy a masterpiece. He destroyed a clever lie. And he replaced it with a better one. Not to sell, but to prove he could. That is both an offense and a triumph." I let that settle. "So," I said, "how do we categorize him? Criminal? Artist? Philosopher?" Wolfe grunted. "Unwise." That got a chuckle out of me. "And Lang?" I asked. "You really think he'll hold his end?" "He will," Wolfe said. "He has no better alternative. He'll spin a story for Meriden. Some nonsense about rare reinterpretation, lost provenance, a new legend. It will sell. You think anyone will know it's fake?" "Everyone will know," Wolfe said. "That is the point. It will become art, not because it's real, but because it admits it isn't. Very postmodern, very profitable," Wolfe said. I got up and went to the safe. The painting, Trevor's painting, was still there, wrapped in archival paper and laid flat between foam boards. We hadn't decided what to do with it yet. Not officially. "You going to keep it?" I asked. "No," Wolfe said. "But I may study it. Morbid curiosity. Professional." He said. "The man mimicked a master stroke for stroke. That is not forgery. That is language." I looked at the office wall, the empty space where I'd half expected Wolfe to hang it, but he hadn't. He never would. Some lies, no matter how lovely, don't belong on the walls of a man who values order. The next morning, the newspapers ran a small, quiet story in the arts section. Private collector reacquires lost work. No image, no details, no mention of Meriden, Lang, or Dunn. Just a paragraph of smoke to explain a vanishing act no one could prove happened. Lang had done his job. That same day, a courier arrived with a small parcel. No return address, just a wax seal in the shape of a lemon spiral. Inside was a single Polaroid. The painting. On a wall. No label. And under it, written in felt-tip marker, "After the lie, done." Wolfe examined it for a full minute, then handed it to me without comment. He didn't keep it. I tacked it to the back of a filing cabinet with a paperclip. Just enough respect to acknowledge it. Just enough distance to make sure it didn't become an artifact. That night, we had veal and asparagus with white wine. Wolfe talked about ancient Roman fish sauces. I didn't interrupt, but as I cleared the plates, I glanced at the tray on his desk. The lemon peel was still there. It hadn't browned. Not yet. Just enough curl left to hold its shape, and just enough memory of acid to remind us what truth tastes like when you bite down. The first rain in a week came that night, sharp, angular drops that slapped the office windows like a persistent creditor. It washed the city clean for a few hours and made the brownstone feel more like a citadel than ever. Wolfe didn't comment on the weather, but he permitted an extra log on the fire, which in our house is the equivalent of a meteorological forecast. I was at my desk cataloging case notes, trying to decide if After the Lie sounded more like a painting or a memoir, when the phone rang. Wolfe didn't move. He rarely did for anything under the Richter scale. Goodwin. "Archie, it's Callista Vale." Her voice was softer now, less honed. "Either relief or fatigue, or both. I figured I might hear from you," I said. "How's the world treating you?" "I just received something," she said. "A painting. That got my attention." "Trevor's?" "No," she said. "Not his. The original." I stood up, eyes flicking toward Wolfe. "You're sure?" "I recognize the brushwork," she said. "It's the version Meriden bought, slightly darker tones, more dramatic folds in the napkin, and the signatures embedded in the lemon's third spiral. Trevor told me that when we first saw it, delivered half, no return label. Just a note. It said, you should see what came before, not just what came after." Wolfe's eyes opened. I relayed the gist in a glance and a nod. "She's received the original," I said. "No signature, no sender. Just a message." Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "Ask her to bring it. Immediately." Callista didn't object. She never did when the stakes involved memory or motive. Half an hour later, she was back in the office, the painting carefully wrapped and propped against her knees like a fragile confession. Fritz offered her a towel for her rain-spotted coat, which she accepted with the dazed compliance of someone trying to hold two realities in their hands and keep them both true. She unwrapped the painting. Wolfe didn't rise, but he leaned forward a precise inch. It was the original. There was no doubt. The details were slightly more ornate, the lemon peel brighter, but less disciplined. The forgery had trimmed the excess. This had the flair of the Baroque, the indulgence of a master, unconcerned with minimalism. "I thought Trevor burned it," I said. "So did I," Callista murmured. "And if he didn't, he lied to you." "Or," Wolfe said, "someone else had it all along." Lang had denied that. Vehemently. But Lang also wore denials like cufflinks, elegant, removable, and entirely for show. "Someone wanted her to see it," I said. "Why?" "To correct the story," Wolfe said. "To reintroduce the ghost." "But Trevor," Callista began, then stopped. "What?" I prompted. "He couldn't have sent it. He didn't know I'd be home this morning. I told him I'd be out of town until tomorrow. That ruled out sentimental mischief." Wolfe tapped the edge of his armrest. "Miss Vale, do you still have the envelope the note came in?" She pulled it from her handbag. Thick ivory cardstock, linen blend, closed with the same wax seal we'd received on the Polaroid. Lemon spiral. Wolfe held it up to the light. Not Trevor's style. Too ceremonious. This is someone else's coda. Lane, I asked. Unlikely. He benefits from the fiction that the original was destroyed. If it resurfaces, he must reframe the narrative again. Meriden. Possibly. But unlikely to bother with poetics. This is too calculated. Callista tilted her head. You think it's a third player? Yes, Wolfe said. Or a second version of a familiar one. Trevor? She asked. No, Wolfe said. Someone who knew Trevor's obsession. Someone who may have helped him without his full knowledge. A collaborator, I said. An unseen hand in the studio. There were discarded materials, Wolfe said. Multiple tubes, varying brush techniques. Fragments of test canvases, inconsistent with Trevor's usual speed. He worked alone, but he started with someone. Callista sat back. So this painting is what? A reminder. Wolfe looked at her. It is a power move, a narrative anchor. Someone wants the original to live again. Not just as a contrast, but as a warning. Against what? Wolfe sipped his beer. Against forgetting which lie came first. That evening I called Saul. He dug. Because that's what Saul does best. By the next morning, we had a name. Elka Rhodes. Painter. Art. Restorer. Former studio assistant at the Rijksmuseum. Moved to New York 5 years ago. Freelanced for collectors. Had one known exhibit, abstract works with still life elements. One of the pieces from that show, a lemon peel, stretched and surreal, unfurling like a banner. She'd met Trevor Dunn 3 years prior, at a show in Dumbo. More than colleagues, less than lovers. She'd once said in an interview archived online, "Forgery is just memory with more confidence." I read that aloud to Wolfe. He nodded once. Find her. Elka's loft was in Gowanus. Half gallery, half greenhouse. She answered the door in a paint-smudged smock, and a look that said she'd expected us, but wasn't planning to offer tea. You found the painting, she said. Not a question. Yes, I said, but the question is why send it? She leaned against the doorway. Because you let him walk away thinking he'd erased something. He didn't. He said he burned it. I said. He thought he did, she said, but I swapped it out. Gave him a blank canvas, soaked in linseed and ash, told him it was the original. Why? To preserve the truth, she said. Not the forgery, the real truth, that the painting existed before his version, that it wasn't his to rewrite entirely. Wolfe didn't speak. He let her dig. She went on. He wanted to replace it, because he hated what it represented. Greed, illusion, exploitation. But that's part of it too. The ugliness belongs to the history. So you're the historian? I asked. I'm the editor, she said. I don't erase, I underline. And the note to Miss Vale, she deserved to see the whole story. You admire her? Wolfe asked. No, she said, but I admired her distance. She knew when to leave the room. Trevor never did. Wolfe looked at me. We're done here. I nodded. But as we turned to go, Elka added, tell him, if he ever wants to try again, really try, he knows where to find me. Back at the brownstone, Wolfe listened to the retelling, then gave one of those sighs that could carry centuries if you let it. She preserved the original not for art, he said, but for authorship. I nodded. She's clever. She's dangerous, Wolfe corrected. More so than Dunn. He wanted to destroy something. She wanted to direct it. So what now? Nothing, Wolfe said. Let them keep their ghosts. We've done our part. He rose rare and walked to the office window. Outside, the city was clean again. Just for now. Inside, the lemon peel remained. But it had browned at last. It had nothing left to confess. The final act played out, not in drama, but in stillness. It was 4 days after our visit to Elka Rhodes. The brownstone had returned to its natural rhythm. Silent mornings, precise meals, and the sound of Wolfe's voice only when the world outside demanded it. Fritz was polishing silver. I was catching up on expense reports. I had no intention of filing honestly. Wolfe was, as usual, in the plant rooms whispering philosophy to his orchids in Latin, as if they'd grown up reading Seneca. The painting, the dun, remained in the safe. Wolfe hadn't touched it since the day Trevor left, though I'd caught him glancing toward the filing cabinet once or twice, where the Polaroid from the anonymous package was still clipped. Not with reverence, with calculation. He wasn't finished. That evening, just after 9, a letter arrived by hand, not postmarked. No envelope. A single folded page in cream paper slipped beneath the door by someone who must have vanished before Fritz could reach the foyer. It was addressed to Wolfe, but printed in a familiar, sharp, tidy hand. Nero Wolfe, you win. The original is in the care of someone who will never sell it. The copy has become the truth, and the truth is now a footnote. That is how it should be. Trevor was always a storm. I was the one who kept the brush steady. Do not look for me. You already know where I am. Wolfe read it once and handed it to me. I read it twice. She's claiming authorship, I said. No, Wolfe murmured. She's claiming authority. He didn't ask me to find her. He didn't ask Saul to dig up her bank accounts or track her movements. He simply sat back, his eyes half-lidded. She understood the most dangerous part of the deception. I waited. That it isn't the forger who redefines truth, Wolfe said, but the curator. 3 weeks passed. Lang sent word through a back channel Saul had planted in his office that the replacement was now on display at a private salon in Vienna. Quiet, exclusive, cloaked in irony. Guests were told the story of the stolen original and the mystic copy made by a recluse whose whereabouts remained unknown. Lang called it a modern parable. Mirrodin was reportedly thrilled. He'd told an entire room that he owned the myth itself. Wolfe said only, "That man deserves gout." Callista Vale sent a thank you note. A real one, fountain pen, fine paper, sealed with nothing but discretion. She was heading to Rome. A new post, consulting for a museum that specialized in lost artifacts and reclaimed identities. Trevor Dunn never wrote, but a package arrived one Monday. A small canvas, unframed. A study, rough, muted. Grapes and cloth. No lemon, no signature. Just a faint spiral etched into the texture, with the handle of a brush, barely visible except under angled light. Wolfe didn't comment when I placed it on the desk. He looked at it for a long while, then said he's improving. And that was that. As for me, I filed the case notes under cultural crimes, which I invented that afternoon. I didn't include the Polaroid. I didn't include the Rhodes letter. Some things, even in our line of work, live better outside the file. But I kept the lemon peel. Fritz tried to throw it out twice. I rescued it from the bin both times. It had curled now into something tighter than a spiral, almost like a knot. Desiccated, brittle, and a shade of brown best described as historic. Wolfe caught me looking at it once. "Still carrying meaning, Mr. Goodwin?" he asked. "Still carrying something," I replied. He didn't object. On a cold evening in early March, a new client came by. Simple matter, suspected forgery in a vintage stamp collection. Wolfe took the case reluctantly, mostly because the stamps were French, and Wolfe has an odd weakness for 19th century European bureaucratic aesthetics. After she left, I sat with him in the office. "You ever think about it?" I asked. "What we just went through?" "Frequently," he said. "Still think Dunn was a fool." "Yes," Wolfe said. "But he was a purposeful one. That forgery, it wasn't just a painting. It was a story, a challenge." "Indeed. And we never really solved it, did we?" He looked at me. "We solved what mattered," he said. "We ensured no one was harmed. We protected what could be salvaged. That is enough." I looked toward the safe. "And the copy?" "It remains here," Wolfe said, "as a record, not as art. A relic." "A relic," he agreed, "of what people will believe when told the lie is beautiful enough." He rose, slowly, and moved toward the window. The snow outside was just beginning to fall, turning the sidewalk into a watercolor sketch. Wolfe folded his arms. "There will be other cases," he said. "Other truths masquerading as art. But this one was different. Because it came into the house," I said. "Because it nearly changed the house," Wolfe replied. He turned back to me. "I do not often permit disruption, Mr. Goodwin. But when I do, it is because something must be shown, not merely seen." He returned to his chair. "Then what did this show you?" I asked. He thought for a moment, then said, "That even the most elegant lie must eventually find the frame it deserves." He closed his eyes. Outside, the snow thickened. Inside, the brownstone held its silence again. Case closed. Painting secured. Illusion catalogued. And the lemon peel. Still there. Still holding its shape. It was a Wednesday afternoon, cloudy, with just enough sun sneaking through to paint half the office in sepia tones. Wolfe had just finished browbeating a fishmonger over a mislabeled tin of anchovies when the doorbell rang. Not loud, but definite, intentional. Fritz opened it, and a moment later, Elka Rhodes stepped inside. She wore black again. Same paint-scarred boots as before, but a cleaner edge to her posture. Not pride, not regret. Something in between, a woman who had seen her storm pass and was still waiting to count the losses. Wolfe didn't rise. He rarely did, but this time I half expected it. He simply gestured to the red chair. She sat without a word, pulled something from her coat. She placed it on the desk and pushed it forward. "Brush and Echoes." I read aloud. "Essays on Artistic Replication. Page 74, she said. Wolfe opened the book, turned to the page and read. Then he looked up. "You wrote this?" "I did, years ago, under a pseudonym." "Then this," Wolfe said, tapping the paragraph with one thick finger, "was your thesis long before Dunn ever lifted a brush." "I thought he'd make the painting," she said. "But I planned the narrative." He needed to believe he was undoing something. I needed the world to ask whether authorship is an act of theft or resurrection. "And which is it?" Wolfe asked. She smiled faintly. "Both." He leaned back. "You made him think he was alone. He wouldn't have done it otherwise. You needed him to build it," Wolfe said. "And you needed us to expose it. Just enough." She didn't flinch. "That's why I sent the original to Miss Vale. I couldn't let the story end with Trevor's version being the only one known. That would have made him the author of a lie. But with both paintings in play, one hidden, one public, the question becomes which story people prefer." Wolfe closed the book. "You came to see if we'd keep playing along," he said. "No," Elka replied. "I came to say goodbye." "To the painting?" I asked. "To the question," she said. She stood. Meriden got what he wanted. Lang got to stay relevant. Callista left untouched. And Trevor got to believe he created something truer than what came before. "And you?" Wolfe asked. "I made the frame," she said. "That was always the point." She left the book and walked out without waiting for Fritz. The room fell quiet again. Wolfe stared at the volume on his desk. I picked it up, skimmed the essay. Dense stuff, but clever. One line stood out. "When the truth becomes inconvenient, art offers us the right lie in the right frame." I read it aloud. Wolfe nodded. "She didn't forge a painting," he said. "She forged a belief. And Trevor, he forged a confession." He looked at me, eyes half-lidded. Together they built a crime that can't be prosecuted, because it exists not on canvas, but in interpretation. "And us? We preserved the evidence," Wolfe said. "As always." I sat back. "So the question remains." "No," he said, standing slowly and moving to the safe. He pulled the wrapped painting out, still sealed, still untouched. He looked at it once, then handed it to me. "Take it to the Metropolitan's Research Archive," he said. "Anonymous deposit. Let the scholars chew on it for a decade." I blinked. "Really? It was never meant for one wall," he said. "It was meant for many minds." I took it, carefully. "You'll keep the lemon peel?" I asked. Wolfe looked at the curled, brown spiral still resting in the glass tray. Yes, he said. Some lies are best preserved. We didn't say anything else for a long while. Outside, the city hummed. Inside, the brownstone exhaled. Another case closed. Another truth framed, then put away.